So this video is part of Hart House's outreach initiative, and today's video is an introduction to Canadian Parliamentary, or CP debate. So essentially, for this format of debate, there's 4 debaters in a room, and there's 2 debaters on each team, forming the government team and the opposition team. So the government team in this format chooses the motion, and the opposition team hears the motion for the first time when the round begins, and begins formulating a response against the arguments of team government. So while this might seem like an unfair advantage, it's actually statistically more likely in tournaments for op teams to win. So each of the 4 speakers in this round have a unique role to fulfill. And these speakers include the Prime Minister, the PM, and the Deputy Prime Minister, the DPM, which are on the government team, and the Leader of the Opposition and the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, which are on the opposition team. So essentially, once these 4 main speeches have finished, each side has the opportunity to offer a whip speech where they summarize arguments for their side at the end of the round. So before the round begins, the judge is going to ask teams to make a couple of decisions. So government team has to choose whether they want PMR or PMRE. So this means that the government chooses between a 7-minute PM speech with a 3-minute whip and a 6-minute PM speech with a 4-minute whip. If you're on opposition, you also have to make a decision whether you want split or traditional op. So opposition can choose whether to have a 10-minute DLO speech where the first minute and the last 4 minutes are protected time, or a 7-minute DLO speech followed by a 3-minute whip, which is offered by the LO. So essentially the timing is a Prime Minister speech first, that is 6 or 7 minutes long, an LO speech, which is 7 minutes long, a DPM speech, which is 7 minutes long, a DLO speech, which is 7 or 10 minutes long. There would then be an opposition whip following that, which is 3 minutes long, and finally a government whip, which is 3 or 4 minutes and is offered by the Prime Minister. The only other thing to consider before the round starts is whether the motion is op choice or not. So government team can decide to give the opposition team the opportunity to pick which side of the debate they want to argue, meaning government will be prepared to argue either side depending on which opposition picks. So government team will give the motion, they will explain context and any information needed, and opposition team can ask clarification questions. Then the opposition team takes a few minutes to decide which motion side they want to argue, and the round will then be able to begin. So in terms of fulfilling the roles within this round, so if you are Prime Minister, in order to do a good job in this role, so you're stating the motion for the first time, and you're also giving any background information that's necessary for the other team to understand and be able to debate the motion. So this means any context needed that is outside of what is considered general knowledge. And also you need to define the terms in the motion, so pick anything like the location of the motion, the scope of the debate, and other ambiguous terms within the motion that you want to define, and then offer just an overarching theme and roadmap of all the argumentation that's going to come out in the round from government team and begin to offer those types of arguments. The next speaker to go up would be the Leader of the Opposition. So the Leader of the Opposition is going to begin to develop a case when they hear the motion at the beginning of the round, and they're going to contest any of the definitions or models or characterizations that they disagree with that is offered by government, or offer any counter definitions that they want to offer. And then they're going to provide the main points of argumentation that are going to come out on side opposition, and they're going to refute the arguments that they've heard from side government. So they're going to try to disprove or mitigate any of the benefits that have already been offered by side government. Then the next speaker to go up is the Deputy Prime Minister. So the Deputy Prime Minister has to engage with opposition content and begin refuting the points that have been offered by the LO. It's also important in this position to try to preempt any ways that these arguments can be strengthened or slightly expanded on in the DLO, seeing as the LO had limited time to come up with these arguments. And then you're going to want to rebuild the arguments that were offered in the PM speech, and try to rebuild them from any of the refutation that the LO offered. So at the end of your speech, you can just take a bit of time to summarize what the government team has offered in the debate that day. And then the Deputy Leader of the Opposition will speak. So the Deputy Leader of the Opposition is going to do refutation of the content that's been offered by side government, and they're going to try to take on the most impactful, the most crucial arguments that were offered by the other team first, and really in depth, and then they're going to start rebuilding opposition arguments that were offered by the first half of their team, and ones that may have been underdeveloped, or ones that may have been attacked by refutation from government speeches. So finally, we get to the whip speeches. So both teams get an opportunity to offer whip speeches where no POIs can be asked, And a good way to structure your whip speech is to either split it up into themes or to go on an argument-by-argument basis. But essentially, you want to be using this time to summarize any of the arguments that are offered by your team and weigh them against the ones offered by the other side. So you're going to explain why the arguments you've offered are more impactful and more likely than the other ones. This is just a good place for a summary. Okay, so finally we have this idea of POIs. So this has been mentioned like a few times, and a POI is essentially a question that you ask to the other debaters in the round. So you can raise your hand, you can stand up, or you can say POI, and you try to catch the attention of the other debater. And then you have to wait. So wait and see if you are accepted for your POI, if your POI is rejected, or you can choose to withdraw your POI. So when you're in the round, try to offer POIs to the other team and also try to accept them, because this shows like clash and engagement with the arguments that the other team is offering. And when you're giving a POI, try to get straight to the point and make it last around 15 seconds. So protected time essentially means that no POIs can be offered during this time. And this is the first and last minute of any 7-minute speech and the first and last 30 seconds of a 6-minute speech and any whip speech. So a judge generally tends to indicate the end of protected time. Okay, so bringing your own motion. The government team will be bringing their own motions to this type of debate and essentially have unlimited time before a tournament to build their case and to think of their motion. So another option that they do have is to use straight motions. So these are motions that are provided at the tournament, and they're created by the CA team, and you can use a 15-minute window that you will always have before the round to create your arguments for these motions, and you are very welcome to use those ones. However, a crucial part of CP is knowing how to make your own motions. So one thing to consider is the topic of your motion. And the topic of your motion can be anything that you're like really interested in, that you have some sort of knowledge in and want to debate. So essentially this can include things that are involved in pop culture, like your favorite TV show, your favorite movie. It could be philosophy, science, art, any topic that you think would make a good debate. So this gives you a lot of options and a lot of opportunity to pick topics that you think are really interesting or funny or creative. And essentially, you are having the goal in mind of picking a motion that has two equal sides to it, and they're both debatable for either team. So you want to provide all the context to the other team that is necessary to having a good debate. So anything that you think is necessary to know that is beyond common knowledge or general knowledge that a regular person would have, you might want to offer in your speech so that you can have a good debate. So what are some ways to get familiar with the types of motions that are run at these types of tournaments? So you can take motions that you've done in practice or at other tournaments. You can look online for motions that have been done at other tournaments. You can modify those, or you can use those and develop your arguments beforehand for that round. You can also talk to other debaters. You can talk to your mentors at your club and ask for their opinion and any potential issues that you might have with the motion. And then another really important thing to consider is equity. So this is always considered when making motions for any type of debate, and you want to pick motions that abide by equity guidelines. So make sure you know what those are and make sure that you're following them. It's also a good idea to ask other debaters for their opinions on the topic so that you can see where you might have overlooked something. And finally, it's really important to just be respectful, and if you are going to choose a topic that is sensitive or that is discussing something that might be triggering to someone, you should offer content warnings before the round begins and offer people the opportunity to opt out. So essentially, the opposition team does have a couple of things that they can do if they think that the motion that is being offered to them by said government is unfair. So one way that the opposition can respond is by making a tight call. So a tight call refers to when the government team chooses a motion that leaves side opposition with no arguments, or what they feel are extremely low impact arguments, and makes it an easy win for government. So in many tournaments, it is expected that side opposition declare or explicitly argue as to why the motion is tight within their speeches. And it also allows for the government team to interact with this tight call. And then this will allow judges to take this into consideration when judging the round, potentially penalizing the government team for bringing that type of motion. Another thing that can happen is a spec call. So a spec call is when a motion is brought that requires the opposition team to have knowledge outside of the scope of general knowledge. So this means that most debaters would probably lack this type of knowledge, and it doesn't allow for them to have a fair debate. So if you choose a topic that you have a lot of really niche knowledge in, but you aren't able to provide the appropriate context within your speech to have the other team debate it with you, then you probably shouldn't be picking that for your motion, because it has an unbalance within the debate. So looking over all these things, I just want to wish you guys good luck in the Canadian Parliamentary debate format, and to encourage you guys to have lots of fun choosing motions and exploring Canadian Parliamentary.